The early morning sun barely pierced the horizon as Jake stood on the edge of the weathered dock, staring out at the restless ocean. Deep-sea diving was more than a hobby for him, it was an obsession, a chance to escape the world above and dive into the mysterious depths where few dared to go. Today, he planned to explore the fabled Cavern of Shadows, a notorious underwater cave system whispered about among divers as unforgiving and perilous. His gear lay meticulously arranged beside him, heavy oxygen tanks, pressure gauges, and his reliable diving computer. Each piece had been checked and double-checked. Yet, as he clipped the last strap on his suit, a faint unease crept into his chest, a subtle whisper that something was off. With a steady breath, Jake slipped into the cold embrace of the ocean. The surface rippled softly as he descended, the light around him dimming with each meter. Below, the water grew thick, and silence swallowed him whole. The world above faded away, replaced by an eerie stillness so complete it felt almost unnatural. His flashlight pierced the darkness, cutting through the murky water in thin beams. The jagged outline of the cave's entrance loomed ahead, black as an open mouth ready to swallow him whole. Jake's heart pounded, not from fear, but from the thrill, the promise of secrets hidden in the abyss. But then, subtle signs disturbed the tranquility. His oxygen gauge wavered erratically, fluctuating without reason. The familiar hiss of his breathing equipment shifted, occasionally sputtering, as if warning him of trouble. Dark shapes flickered at the edges of his vision, too vague to identify but persistent enough to unsettle him. As Jake ventured deeper into the cave, the temperature dropped sharply, chilling his bones. Shadows seemed to stretch and twist in unnatural ways along the rocky walls, their movements barely perceptible but undeniably there. He brushed away the creeping dread, focusing on the task ahead. Yet the ocean, vast and unknowable, held its secrets tight. And somewhere in the dark silence beneath the waves, something watched. Jake pushed further into the labyrinthine cave, his flashlight cutting through the oppressive darkness like a fragile beacon. The water around him felt heavier, as if the ocean itself was pressing in. Every breath came slower now, measured, careful, but something was wrong. The steady rhythm of his breathing was interrupted by a sudden, sharp sputter from his oxygen tank. His heart clenched. He glanced down at the gauge. The needle jerked erratically, then plummeted. Panic threatened to rise, but Jake forced it down. This was no time to lose control. The narrow cave walls closed in on him, jagged and unyielding. Visibility was near zero except for the faint halo of his light. The hum of the ocean was replaced by a terrifying silence, broken only by the harsh rasp of his own breathing and the occasional creak of his suit. He reached out, brushing his gloved hand against the cold rock, trying to find a way back. But the passage twisted and turned, a maze carved by unknown forces. The oxygen hissed weakly, barely audible, warning that time was running out. Suddenly, a shadow flickered at the edge of his light. He whipped his head around, nothing. Just the cave. But that feeling lingered, something unseen, watching him in the abyss. With trembling hands, Jake fumbled at his gear, desperate to fix the failing regulator. The pressure built in his chest, each breath harder to draw. The world narrowed to the flashlight beam, the jagged walls, and his fading air supply. Seconds stretched like hours as he struggled in the crushing silence. In the depths of the ocean, trapped and alone, survival became a fragile thread, and every moment counted. Just as Jake's fingers fumbled with the failing regulator, a sudden, chilling current swept through the cave. It was unnatural, a ghostly pull that tugged at him with relentless force, dragging him away from the narrow path he'd been following. The water churned, icy and oppressive, pushing him deeper into the cavern's maze. His flashlight flickered violently, casting jagged shadows that danced on the rocky walls. Shapes moved just beyond the light's reach, dark, shifting forms that seemed alive. Jake's heart raced as the current pulled harder, as if the cave itself was alive, intent on swallowing him whole. He fought to steady himself against the invisible grip, kicking his fins with desperate strength. But the more he resisted, the stronger the current became, dragging him toward the black unknown. The air in his tank was dangerously low, every breath growing more ragged. As he was swept into a vast, open chamber within the cave, the strange forces around him seemed to close in. The water turned colder, the silence thicker, until Jake could almost hear whispers, like voices carried on the tide from a world beyond. A flicker of movement caught his eye, a shadowy figure lurking just out of reach, disappearing whenever he turned to face it. His rational mind screamed that it was just tricks of the light and water, but deep inside, a primal fear told him something far more sinister was watching. The ocean's depths held many secrets. Some were meant to stay buried. Jake's lungs burned, each breath a desperate gasp as he fought the relentless current now fading behind him. But the cave's labyrinthine passages twisted endlessly before him, an underwater maze with no clear exit. The walls closed in, jagged and suffocating, shadows shifting like phantoms in the flicker of his flashlight. His compass spun wildly, useless in this subterranean world. Panic edged closer, but he forced himself to stay calm, every movement deliberate, every breath measured. The water grew colder, and the eerie silence pressed heavily, broken only by the soft scrape of his gloves against the rock. Then, as if etched by some ancient hand, strange markings appeared on the cave walls, symbols and lines that seemed to pulse faintly under his light. They were unlike anything Jake had seen before, a haunting message from others who had ventured too far. The realization hit him hard, he was not the first to be lost here. Others had come, and others had disappeared, swallowed by the darkness. As he pressed deeper, the passage narrowed, forcing him to squeeze through tight crevices. His suit scraped against rough stone, and for a moment, he caught a glimpse of something glinting in the murk, remnants of old diving gear, rusted and abandoned. A chilling reminder of the lives claimed by these waters. The ocean's silence turned oppressive, almost alive, as if the cave itself was watching, waiting for its next victim. Jake's heart hammered as he struggled onward, each stroke a battle against despair. In this underwater tomb, hope was a fragile flame flickering in the dark. Jake's strength was fading fast. Every muscle screamed, every breath felt like a desperate gasp against the crushing pressure of the deep. The labyrinth of caves stretched endlessly, and the hope of escape seemed to slip farther away with every passing moment. Darkness wrapped around him like a shroud, cold and unyielding. But then, through the murky gloom, a faint, distant light appeared, faint yet unmistakably human. A beacon of hope cutting through the suffocating blackness. Guided by sheer will and the flicker of that distant glow, Jake pushed forward. His oxygen tank was nearly empty, his suit battered and torn. Yet the thought of rescue ignited a fierce determination. The ocean, which had threatened to claim him, now seemed to guide him toward salvation. Moments later, hands reached out through the water, a rescue diver, trained and relentless, pulling Jake toward the surface. The ascent was agonizingly slow, the pressure easing with each meter. The outside world's light grew stronger until finally, Jake broke the surface, gasping for air that tasted like life itself. Safe on the boat, wrapped in blankets, Jake's eyes drifted shut, but the terror of the deep-sea ordeal remained etched in his mind. The ocean had almost taken him, yet somehow, against all odds, he had survived. As the waves rocked the boat gently, Jake knew he had faced a nightmare few would ever understand, a journey into the abyss that should have ended his life. But instead, it became a story of survival, a haunting testament to the mysterious, unforgiving depths beneath the sea.